So great to have you here, Adam Evans. I
Oh, hello.
joining us from Toronto. Is it cold up there?
Um, right now, yeah. Yeah. Well, right now I'm not in the core of the city of Toronto because cities are insane and I'm not interested in being anywhere near them. So
Mhm.
over the years, I've transitioned to move slightly away from the city. I'm about 2 hours out.
Oh, wow.
Um,
I didn't know that.
yeah,
Great.
it's just outside because it's just it's too many people. I started to get so frustrated with the amount of condos that would just be flying up like left and right. It turns into this like concrete jungle that I can't deal with.
So
Yeah.
you guys would probably know Adam from his lots of kind of social media presence and everything. He has a really wonderful Instagram page that I've been a follower of for, I think, probably about 3 years now. And it's called We the Ether. We the Ether, which I think is a really cool name. I think it was the name that kind of triggered me and got
Hmm.
me
Hmm.
interested in it because I was like, We the Ether, that's kind of mysterious. So, what were you
It
thinking
is.
about when you came up with that?
Yeah, I initially I wanted it to be something very inclusive. And I knew there was some podcast named We the People. There was one in the UK named We the People. There was another one in the States named that. Wanted something to be very inclusive, and I also wanted something to be a little bit more, I guess, in the esoteric direction in terms of not just referring to person, the individual, the physical, third dimensional meat, flesh and bones type of thing. Something that's a bit more speaking to the spirit of the individual and inclusive in that way. So um, there's this ether, which is kind of like essence or like
Mhm.
fifth element. Some people describe it, and I thought, that's a bit more inclusive, and I think that we're all in this way of like energy. Like when we actually die and decompose into the earth, it's like that. What is that, and where does it go, and what is it connected to? It kind of gives a deeper question in the name, and that's why it's kind of mysterious in that way. I thought it was interesting, and I didn't just want to call it ether that inclusivity purpose because in my vision it's more of a community. In the interviews that I do on the podcast, I really just want to focus on the guest. At some point, maybe I step out. People are interviewing each other, hosting conversations, just a community vibe. It's not really. I don't want to be like the focal point of anything to do with
Mhm.
it. You know what I mean?
Mhm. So we're getting a little feedback on your microphone or anything. I just want to make sure that everyone can hear you really well because I had a few kind of words go in and out. I didn't lose any words, but
Okay.
I want to make sure that everyone can hear well.
Okay.
So, oh, it's funny because ether for me is something that like I always think of Einstein because Einstein kind of moved away from the concept of having an ether, and ether was something that lots of physicists had kind of believed in for a long time. There has to be something beyond nothingness,
Hmm.
and and I still do believe that. So, and I think it's actually the space that connects us all. We tend to focus on the matter and all the things that we can kind of touch and feel, but maybe the thing that's even more important is all the things that that would be in that space. Like Nikola Tesla believed that
Hmm.
infinite energy is inside of that etheric realm. It's in the ether of space itself. So I think that's a very interesting concept. Now you have had an amazing life and career from a very, very young age. So at the age of 14, you started your own corporation, your first, I guess.
Yeah.
Can you tell
Yeah.
me
It
about that?
was. A web design back then, web design, graphic design, flash animation company, basically a creative uh, design development company. And it was a team of about 5 people at the time, mostly young teenagers as well, all kind of in high school and whatnot, but all like flash designers and developers that were just very
Mhm.
early on in what they were doing. And even a graphic designer. I'm still in touch with a lot of them today, which is amazing. It's really cool. And some of them are still in the creative field. Some of them work for ad agencies and this and that. So it's really nice to see them all actually come back and spoken to me and said, when I was a teenager, you helped shape the direction of where I'm going in life. I ended up doing this creative thing, this ad agency, and I just have been bouncing around agencies. It's like me, that's so amazing. It's like back then I thought we were all just kids trying to make a we were doing like we actually started in the gaming space. So we were
Wow.
doing clan websites, gaming companies like electronics manufacturers that focus on gaming. We would sponsor gaming radio stations, sponsor teams, actual teams going to play, in tournaments and whatnot, like Counter-Strike tournaments and all these games back then. We started on internet relay chat, and we had chat rooms for customer support, and everyone would communicate there, and we did sales through that and through our website. I was in my teens. I started around 14, and that lasted. It was actually acquired about maybe 8 years later, 9 years later.
So you got to retire like 22?
It wasn't really retirement. No, it wasn't a retirement. It wasn't that of a sale, and I probably sold it a bit early. It got sold twice since then, and passed around a bit.
What's the name of the company today? What's it part of?
Elusive Design was the name of the company. It held that name after I sold it the one time, it held it, and then the second time it was sold, I think it held it again. Third time was it was a bigger company that bought it out, and then they kind of put it underneath their brand. So it's like, some big company name, Elusive Design underneath now. Yeah, really interesting. When I sold it, I actually had a contract with the new owner where I was going to help transition the team and new ownership over a 3-month period. I was going into an office, which I didn't really like much doing. It was kind of weird going into like my old business, and it's just weird. So after the 3 months, I was done. And then after about a little over about a year, I started a new company. I had a non-compete when I started the new company, and basically same industry, but just done much better. And that one now is called Thought Media. And that's
say that again. Say it
Thought
again.
Media.
Thought Media.
Yeah.
Wow.
That one.
Sounds like Thoth. Sounds like Thoth Media.
Yeah. World Tablet Media.
That's right.
Yeah. The team of we go between like 15 upwards of 20 people depending how busy we are. And I've had some interns there as well. I just find that super cumbersome sometimes to take interns on. I had one that I took recently and built, and it was like, oh man, I put an effort into this, and it's a solid team. Actually, the part of that team came over from my company way back. Like some of them I've been working with for over 15 years.
Wow.
It's crazy. They've had kids, they send me photos of their kids, and they like send me wedding invites to all this stuff. And it's just nuts to be, to have that relationship with people for so long and work with people for so long. It's really cool.
That is fantastic. So did you, I guess, at that young age, have a vision of kind of selling it and
No.
experiencing that success? I mean, you're able to manifest, and you're kind of really big on abundance. I've noticed that you post a lot about abundance and manifestation techniques. Did you do that from a very young age, or is that something you learned a little bit later on?
It was later on, because at the early age, it was just like I was saying, trying to make a buck with a bunch of teenagers, and this is what we're doing. We have access to computers, we have access to internet, we can do this little thing. And our time is really what we convert into money in that sense, because we just sit and we learn what we need to learn, and then we either design or develop whatever we got to do to make it happen, or do marketing, or whatever it may be. So back it was like just making money and having a job. I worked some crappy jobs briefly. Like I worked at a grocery store. I think I was making like $70 an hour, and I worked for about 3 months to see how it was kind of working a job in that way. After the 3 months, I went to the owner of the store. I said, "This is nuts. I can make $60 an hour or more doing web design." He told me if he can make $60 an hour, he would quit his job as the owner of this grocery store. I was like, "Well, I don't know what to tell you there, man. Anyways, I'm out." I quit. And then I was making that very quickly, like $60 an hour plus, just off doing, digital marketing and web design stuff. So it just made more sense to be involved in that. But honestly, I almost quit doing it for a while. Like I went to college for marketing and business related stuff. I felt like it was a waste of time when I was going. There was one time I walked in late to class, 15 minutes. The professor had my website up on the projector, all the students there, and he asked me to stand up and explain what I do, how I do it to the class, as like just whatever, not for credit, just because some of the professors knew that I already had a company, I was already doing stuff, and we're learning about business and marketing. But I was just like, this is very boring. Like I had more fun in the psychology classes, like things that were not necessarily related to what I was doing, but they were just, outside the space. I've always been interested in things that are, other things that I can acquire, new knowledge, new information. So, but yeah, to answer your question, that the manifestation thing really didn't happen till later, and I almost quit along the way, and then I ended up selling it later. Even the new company I have now, I almost sold that, but it didn't work out in negotiations. The person that was interested wanted to merge it with another company, wanted to keep me on as 25% owner. I wouldn't be able to do that. So, it's, but yeah, it's not something I envisioned that way. So it was only really in the past several years I've managed to sort of hone in using visualization and trying to like manifest things in the world. And that could be anything. Doesn't even have to be business, money related. Like I do powerlifting, and I've only started doing that within the past 7 years, and manifesting being able to visualize a 500-pound squat, visualize a 600-pound deadlift. Like these are very, and I spent a lot of time visualizing a 600-pound deadlift. I achieved that actually not too long ago, maybe a year or two ago. And, that to me is just as much, it has so much value, just as much as business or anything else. So the visualization and manifesting can come in any which way. It doesn't have to be financial. It can be anything that you're claiming and bringing forth in life. It's like you're lassoing it, drawing it towards yourself, but meanwhile you're also walking towards it as well. It's like this union, this joining of what you're trying to accomplish. That's what that inspires me in some way.
My own, I've been also a big advocate of manifestation for many years. I gave a TED talk on replacing fear in your life with gratitude.
I saw that, yeah.
And how that's kind of a good way to turn on the manifestation process or machine, because for me, raising the vibration so that you're kind of rid of this lower density type, lower vibrational feelings is critical to being able to manifest the things that you want in a positive way. I always think of it like this, that our brains are almost like radios, right?
Mm-hmm.
And our heart is the tuning dial of the radio. So if we are, at a high frequency because we're happy and we're grateful and we're in a very positive place emotionally, that emotional dial will be tuning to higher frequency. If you're in a low emotional state, then it will tune to lower frequencies. And so it will take those same concepts, right? The universe looks at everything as the same thing, just in difference and degree, right? It'll take those same concepts. And unfortunately, you might get the opposite of what you're wanting, right? So if you're like thinking, oh, I don't want to be fat, I don't want to be fat, I don't want to be fat, right? Then, and you're doing it from a place of fear, what'll end up happening is you might even manifest gaining weight, right? And that's why it's also really important to exercise the Hawthorne effect, which Hawthorne effect is when basically it just says what gets measured gets done, right? Because you create small improvements and expectations for the next small improvement, expectation for the next small improvement. And in life, we tend to get more what we expect and what we perceive we're going to get than what maybe we think we deserve to get. So, but even that for me, I've changed a lot now. I still practice visualization. I still practice manifestation, but now I'm probably more in the mindset that, what I used to think was, a concept of destiny, I now think of more as a free will of my higher self. So everything that's happened in my life, I don't need to struggle and I don't need to fight for, I don't need to like super strong manifest or push it, because it's something that I would have already chosen for myself. So getting past that stage of I have to struggle for everything, because actually, Canada, I think I got attached to the struggle. I grew up, as we're talking about, I grew up without, I paid for my own college. I didn't have, I didn't come from a broken home by any stretch, but my family wasn't wealthy and I had to go out on my own. And so I had 3 jobs in college, and I also had my own company that I started when I was in my early 20s, that I sold in my early 20s also. And I remember, and I got married really young, which I'm grateful for now. I wouldn't change anything, but I was probably on the too young side of young of getting married at that stage of life. But I have a beautiful daughter now as a result of that. So again, I'm very thankful for that. But basically, I have found that I started to get kind of addicted to that struggle, right? Where it's like, if I were a mountain climber, I'd be like, oh, remember that time that I almost fell off? That was pretty cool. And sort of you kind of get addicted to the drama and the difficulty of it. And some people, I think, learn to find comfort in sleeping on a knife because they know that they're alive, right? And so I used to practice manifestation so often, all the time. Now I try to do it just from a place of balance, and not. I don't imagine that I've got an obstacle coming against me, and that therefore I have to overcome that obstacle. And I found that has made a big difference for me in the type of manifestation. Things happen to come easier now than they did in the past. Whereas before, maybe I thought I didn't deserve it, so I had to fight really hard, and then maybe I would deserve it. My mother was, I hope she's not watching this right now. My mother was a tiger mom. And she said to me when I got, all A's and one A minus once, she's like, well, next time if you get all A's and no A minuses, then I'd really love you. So that's pretty brutal, right? It was like,
yeah.
Wait a minute. And you don't know that you're carrying that baggage with you.
Oh, yeah.
Because we all just want to be loved, right? We all just want to be loved and feel good enough. And so this place that you tap into for like manifestation and everything, do you find that you've evolved your thinking at all on how you look at manifestation and why you're able to attract abundance, and what that sort of cycle is, that how does that energy come to you?
I like that you use the word evolve, because it is this constant evolution. Even, tomorrow, the next day, it's always evolving how I approach things. And the struggle that you refer to, I feel like I kind of have that too sometimes. And that's why I'm drawn to taking on new challenges. In my line of work, it comes with projects like, we discussed your project that you're interested in doing. I see these as like puzzles, like Rubik's cubes, and we have to figure out which, in the case of programming and whatnot, which programming language would make more sense for this, and what gives you longevity, what makes it so that your project, whatever it may be, lasts 5, 10 years, 15 years before, trying to think ahead is always interesting. Back when we first, my team first started doing Flash, we didn't really think that far ahead to think Flash was going to get nuked the way it did, and all of a sudden we're just going to shift to this non-Flash world and mobile devices and stuff. So that was a bit of a shocker, because we started, development and whatnot before mobile really was around. So that was interesting, but you just had to be quick to adapt and whatnot. So I just like to solve puzzles and challenges in that way in life. And even when it comes to lifting, the challenge and the puzzle of how to accomplish this heavy task, whatever it may be. So I think that satisfies that need within me for that struggle. Because if it's something that you've been doing, like, for instance, digital media marketing, whatever, in my case, for 15 years or more, coming up on 20 years, it's like there's not too many struggles there. So I start to look elsewhere and start to take on new challenges. And that sort of satisfies that urge. The manifesting thing, I find that as long as I don't have the attachment to what I'm trying to, like, nothing is going to make or like break me in that way if I don't have it. It's like I work towards manifesting, but I don't do so that it's like I'm too attached to what I'm trying to manifest, if that makes any sense. And that way I can allow it to flow a little bit more naturally in my life. I don't necessarily have the attachments to, the hardest thing to relinquish attachment to is the physical self, the physical body. It's the physical appearance, especially if you're attractive or you have this or that in life. So it's losing these attachments that allows things to flow from that higher place, that higher self. And as you said, it's almost like that higher knowing. It knows so much more than these like egos that we have walking around. It has such bigger vision for us than we can see most of the time on a minute by minute basis. That everyone has their own, it's like perfectly unique plan just for them, and it's set in motion long before they're born. And I believe it, a lot of kicking and screaming along the way from the ego, but about just attachment, I find is really, you can lead some of that.
I'm really glad you mentioned that attachment issue, because I always, in the beginning, when I would manifest, I would focus on the thing I wanted, and I would create an attachment for myself. In fact, I would get to a stage, I'll tell you, I bought this watch, right? And I used to buy watches all the time, and I don't even wear, my digital watch battery's dead. So usually I wear my digital watch, but I have from that period of time in my life, probably way too many watches. I don't want to say the number that I would buy, where I had this philosophy where when I would be facing a very large challenge, like I'd wake up afraid, right? For whatever reason, like
Mm,
the world's going to get me today type thing, or it's going to get me a few
yeah,
months from now, or
I've had
my,
that feeling before. Yeah.
yeah, my new startup venture is somehow not going to succeed. And it's going to be this huge embarrassment. And like, I'll be publicly humiliated type of thing. And when I was still in that kind of stage of thinking, what I would do to overcome it is I would go and I'd always know some watch, right, that I wanted to have next. So I collected watches. And so I'd always have some watch in the back of my mind that was usually like kind of expensive. And I thought of it kind of like, a burn the ships mentality, right? Which was, I don't know if you know the story, and it's not a very wonderful story, but it's a story of the colonialization of Mexico by Cortez, right? When he came, he had like, I think it was 6 ships and 300 men, or maybe it was 5 ships and 300 men. And they all landed, probably somewhere on the east coast of Mexico. And they all kind of went into the forest to relieve themselves, right? They've been on this long boat ride. They get off the boat and they go back out to the beach and they look out into the ocean and they see all their ships on fire, right? And so Cortez says to them, hey guys, by the way, I burned all the ships because we're not going back. And there's only 300 of us and there's 3 million, we estimate, Aztecs, and we're going to get their gold, right? And so I never liked the story of the colonialization aspect of it, but the whole story is so radical about burning the ships. There's no way we're going home. Either we do our mission or we're all going to die type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when I would be afraid of whatever it was, right, I would try to overcome that fear by buying an expensive watch. So I would buy a watch, and as a gift to myself for achieving the thing that I was afraid I might not succeed with. So I would buy the watch, and every time I'd look at the watch at the time, I would remember the future event as if it had already happened, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I found that I could collapse like a wave function of time, and it worked every time. Like it literally worked every time. But the struggles, because that was part of the manifestation, I'm like, oh, I'm going to overcome this really, really big struggle. It's like I'm going to lift 1,000-pound dead lift, right? And I was creating a lot more of the struggle in that manifestation than I needed to, right? And I also got attached to that. And I realized that it was the want. And now I think one of the ways that manifestation, and I'd love to hear for yourself, has evolved for me is that I take the want out of it and I just visualize it and ground myself in a very good, strong emotional state at that moment in time when I'm visualizing it. It's not like I need it. It's not like I have to have it. I'm not attached to it. Just like you said, you imagine waking up one morning in a house and coming down the stairs. Maybe you can tell that story.
Yeah. It's grounding in the feeling of, and I like to use gratitude because you can use the visualization, go into the future, ground in that feeling that you had, joyous feeling of accomplishing that task, and then use gratitude to really anchor that in. Say, I'm so grateful for having achieved and accomplished this thing I've set out to do, and I'm so proud of myself for doing so. And swell yourself with that emotion that it becomes so real, because that's kind of how we work as humans. It really, that's what manifesting is. You're using that emotion to really create that reality for yourself. Now it's just kind of taking those necessary steps along the way and having the faith and kind of letting go, so to speak. Not so much just kind of coming back and saying it's just going to happen. You still have to do the work towards that thing that you're working towards, but at least you have that backing, and that you can always revisit that place, revisit that emotion and experience it. So that's a healthy approach, I would say, is to accomplishing something.
So now you do a lot of posts on manifestation and abundance. Do you find that everybody receives it, and thinks, oh, wow, that's awesome? Or do you think some people may not like it?
Yeah, a lot of people like hangups with anything to do with money, or like fancy cars or a house, or luxury things. That money can't be associated with spirituality and this and that. I can understand their their points of view and their perspective and opinion. I mean, if I was to speak to my higher self in a way and ask about the value of money, it's I think we as egos moving around associate a different type of value to money. Let's say a higher self would. I mean, we have this like my precious type of thing, you know, like the Lord of the Rings,
Right.
and we must have, and we
Eagle.
yes, Schmiegel, that's right. We create these weird like facade belief systems around what money is, but really it just comes down to an exchange of energy. It comes down to an expression of gratitude, as far as I can see it. If I'm giving someone money for something, I'm expressing my gratitude. I'm grateful for receiving that they're giving me. If I'm like, you know, buying a burger from a fast food place, I don't just buy the burger, give them the cash, and say thanks. I actually do appreciate the effort that these people take to prepare the sandwich. You know, that they take their time, that they do that for me. And if I ask it to be a custom way, that they do that, you know, like these little intricacies is what I'm giving them the money for. I appreciate all the effort that came into putting together that cheeseburger for me and handing it to them. I'm not just saying a cheeseburger that's this thing. It needs to get there, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah, totally.
having a different perspective around money is healthy. A lot of people don't really have that, and then that creates like hangups around seeing, you know, abundant posts and, you know, claim $1 million for this. These are just like kind of aids to help get someone in the mental space of manifesting. But the truth is, you really have to view money as an exchange of energy, and that's an infinite amount of this energy in the world. You can really think of it as like the US dollar if you want. You know, the way they print it might as well be cryptocurrencies or anything else.
True that.
You know, it's really just an exchange of energy and an exchange of gratitude, as far as I can tell. So if you look at it from any other perspective, you can start to really like have attachments to it and associate negative belief systems around it. So I'd say release all that. Technically, I mean, really, you just need money to survive and like eat. You don't really need a fancy Lamborghini. I get it. Doesn't have to do with spirituality, sure, but you can accomplish those things. And a lot of people, it's like they want to, but then they say they don't, and they get upset around it. It's like that's all, you're just expending energy, which you could be using to manifest. You could be using to embrace your own abundance and start to accept that in your life. It's, you know, don't, like you were saying, don't focus on those lower energies or those lower vibratory frequencies. Start focusing on the higher and really embrace that as your truth, you know, in the world.
Well, I also think that, you know, I've said this on your podcast before as well. I don't think of the universe as the universe. I think it more as the you inverse. And when I say you, I mean myself. So whatever I'm experiencing in the universe around us, it's really just the me inverse reflecting back at me.
Yeah.
And those are the things that I might not be consciously aware of. I've so repressed them from my consciousness that I've created a separation from them. So I just start seeing them everywhere. And those things I don't like about myself, I start judging in everybody else, you know. And I tried to I've really tried hard to look at the world differently now. And whenever I find myself wanting to judge someone, which still happens quite often from time to time, I stop myself and I try to say out loud, I am that I am. The thing that I'm about to judge in somebody else. And so usually when someone is going to judge someone for, you know, their abundance or whatever, right? It's maybe their own repressed feelings about money that they have that they feel lack and they want more of. And they'll say, oh, you're so money driven. And actually, that's their own repressed feeling that they've denied so much that it's in their subconscious mind, because they might have an unhealthy relationship with it. It might go back to when they were a child, right? And someone made them feel bad because they were showy with their money, or maybe the opposite, right? Which was that they didn't have it. And all they thought of was that they wanted it. One thing I definitely see in life is the things that we chase after are the things that will always be elusive to us, right? It will always be elusive to us. If we chase after the praise of all the people around us, they're really just reflections of us inside, then the real issue, that's just a symptom. The real sickness that you might be experiencing is that you love yourself conditionally. and you want praise and sort of deserving feelings for yourself. And so you're looking for it from the outside world, because you're actually saying, hey, I really care what everybody thinks, because really you don't feel good enough. And I think that's one of the biggest issues with manifesting abundance, is people having a deep-seated feeling that they're just not good enough. And so then it turns into, especially in the spiritual community from time to time, being very judgy on, oh, you should do this for free, or you should do this. Abundance is really a reflection of your own balanced state, right? It's energy flow. And to me, it's like, it has nothing whatsoever to do with spirituality. So someone who is wearing sackcloth and ashes is no better or no worse than someone who is driving a very expensive car or whatever. It matters more how they feel about themselves ultimately. And that balance is what will attract abundance in a cycle to you, right? And I think everyone's got different paths, and I believe that our higher consciousness sort of chooses those paths for us. But it also makes me raise the question of the big topic today now is about universal basic income. So I'd love to hear your opinion on that particular topic.
Yeah, so I feel that, and it's interesting, we were just talking about struggle, but I feel like that to have that struggle and that desire to achieve and overcome things, it kind of gets diminished when there's a universal basic income. People start to feel that it's, and we were discussing earlier, but it's like a safety net, or it allows people to fall into complacency. Growing up, I was raised by a single mother, and we were in kind of a lower income housing area in an apartment building. So everyone else in the apartment building, about 90% of the apartment building was on subsidized housing. Like they were basically getting money from the government, and they had lower rent. And so I grew up around a lot of these people that had this type of thinking, because I grew up sort of not with any real means to like that much. Like I really just had computers and one computer to start, and internet. But to grow up around these people and then to see a lot of the mentality and hear a lot of the mentality that they would have of like, oh, I can't make this much more because then I won't get my check next week from the government, the so nice government to make people believe that they need that level of assistance. That's my other hang up with it, is that I don't think someone should rely. It takes away their sovereignty. If you're an infinite, abundant, fully prosperous human being, why do you need some little handout, something small from the government? People think it's a lot. That's not a lot. If you think $2,000 a month is a lot, you're already limiting yourself. There is so much more capability in each and every one of you watching, listening to this right now, that you may not be fully aware of, but you can make $2,000. You can make it passively while watching this. Like start to shift your perception, because when you're getting handouts like that from the government, it keeps people down it creates a ceiling. You don't want a ceiling. You want to be able to burst through that ceiling. That's my take on it anyway. So I don't think it's the greatest thing. I understand some people, they have challenges or certain disabilities or inabilities in life, and maybe they need assistance. But for the average walking human being, I don't think they need some universal basic income. I think they can achieve and accomplish so much more. I think if you want to go conspiratorial, the government to some degree understands and knows that, and they want to keep a ceiling to the population at a certain level, because it's tricky when everyone's breaking through and everyone becomes millionaires and has this sovereignty and this abundance, and they can do whatever they want, and it starts to be, you can't control it as much. So yeah.
No, I can only speak from my own personal perspective on this. I guess my own personal experience, rather. If there had been, I had to pay for my own college. When I turned 18, my parents gave me luggage for my birthday. That was sort of like their nice way of saying, okay, time to launch, get out of the nest type of thing. And I never lived with my parents again from the time I was 18 years old. And, that was not easy. I remember calling my mother once from college. I went to live in Korea for 2 years first, and then I got back from Korea, and I called her up and I said, hey, can I borrow some money for my tuition? And she's like, no. And I was like, I know you have some money, you can do this. And she's like, no, you need to learn. And like, it was a total tough love thing. And so of course I had to go get, literally had 3 jobs while I was in college. And but now I'm so grateful that she did that, because it taught me total self-reliance. And I think if I had a universal basic income to fall back on, there are many times in life that I may have just missed out on the experiences that I had, because I would have just thought, okay, well, maybe I don't have to worry about that. I'll just not do
Hmm.
that. You know,
I
I'll just,
like that you said experience. I like that you said experience. I think that's really important. Like the experience is more valuable than that money
oh,
that you could, like it that develops your character. Like that's why you're here as a human being, to have experiences, to acquire this
100%.
information, to grow. And
It's the
and
only real reason I believe we're here is because we it's just like anything in school, right? I went to MBA school, and they require you in MBA school to have a few years of experience, like 3 to 5 years of business experience before you go to MBA school. And because there's certain things that you can teach in theory, and didactic gets you to a certain point, but unless you actually have the experience, it's not real, right? So
yeah.
I think if we didn't come here, we could all just kind of go to a school, but unless we had an experience that we thought was so real that we it was like a live or die type of thing, and we only had one chance to do it, so it's scarcity built into the entire system, right? Then I don't think we would actually be able to take these experiences from each lifetime to the next. And I fundamentally believe that the experience is the only thing you do. You can't take money. You can't. There's all these other things that we think we get to take with us. It doesn't work. The only thing we really can take with us is our memories and experiences. And to me, that is what has led to the richness of life. And so, if it was taken away from me, or if I had something to fall back on, I think there are many times I would have missed out on many of the wonderful experiences that I would never ever give up. Because when you're in school, who are the teachers we remember? Do we remember the easy ones, or do we remember the hard ones? I mean, I've had so many teachers in different levels of graduate school and college, and back in high school and junior high, and even back in elementary school days. The only teachers I really remember are the ones that challenged me and believed that I could accomplish more than I thought I could accomplish. Those are the ones that I look back on and go, wow, that was. And it's the same thing with my life experiences. The ones that are easy, I don't even, if I'm like telling a story of my life, I I don't go over all the easy experiences. I would run back over in my mind over the challenges that I learned something, and a principle, and that's way more valuable than any amount of money. Money is transient.
Hmm.
It could be worthless tomorrow, and very likely it will be worthless tomorrow,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because we've been printing money like crazy, as you just referenced. But
yeah.
I am grateful that I didn't have that growing up, but I don't want to discount the challenge that some people go through day in and day out. And I didn't grow up in a very difficult home environment. I had different challenges throughout life, for sure. Everyone does. But I don't want to discount people's struggle. I had COVID too. I had COVID in December, and I got over it in a week. And my only real symptom was I lost my sense of smell. So, and I got my sense of smell back a week later, but only for good things. I couldn't smell bad things. Now the bad smells are back. They finally came back.
Oh,
So,
they did. That's good.
yeah,
That's
so I have
good.
the full spectrum of smell now. And
Okay.
I'm grateful for that. I'm
That's
grateful for it
great.
because
That's
it
great.
wasn't cool. After a while, I'm like, I miss the bad smells because I don't have context to reference the good smells anymore. It was
Hmm.
a weird feeling. Imagine if you could only see good things, if you could only see the things you want to see. And maybe that's also another metaphor for life, is that we all get into confirmation bias, and that creates these lenses of only seeing what we probably expected to see or wanted to see. So what do you think's happening in the world right now? I know you're up in Canada, you're probably watching this. I would say that this 2020 in the United States has been a train wreck and a shit show, but that would be an insult to trains and shit.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
US, right? It's been really unbelievable. And I stole that line from this film called Death to 2020, which if you
Mm.
haven't seen it on Netflix, it's freaking hilarious.
I saw it. Yeah, I saw it. Uh-huh. Yeah. I'm pretty, I mean, I'm pretty involved in the States as well, just because I have a lot of clients there. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd say 80% of, the business we do is out of the States. I've been watching, yeah, just kind of enjoying. It's like a real life soap opera, political soap opera, everything that's going on. Um, Nothing.
I'm imagining you with like a bunch of aliens going, get the popcorn. And it's like, have you guys seen the latest episode of Planet Earth,
Exactly,
or
yeah.
United States? Like on that
Oh
show,
man.
Death of 2020, that
Yeah.
woman, she's like, oh, there's this mental show, the English woman, she's like, this mental show called America.
Yep, yeah, yeah, it's exactly what it
I
is.
love
Yeah.
it.
But it's not just America. It's England as well. It's Canada too.
Yeah.
In Canada they've set up concentration camps, just like I see they're doing in Germany. This is a global pandemic, obviously, but it's a global restriction, or an imposed restriction. So, and even here, where I'm at now, there's lockdowns. Like none of the businesses are open. I walk around and I talk to some of these, local store owners, and I feel bad for them because they're paying rent, like some of them $5,000 a month rent, and they're making like nothing, like fractions of that. It's like they basically told me 2020 was a write-off. Now they're telling me 2021's a write-off. There's only so many write-offs you can do as a business before you just got to shut down. So a lot of them, unfortunately, are in that position now,
Same
and
here in
it's
California. 60% of restaurants are going to go out of business.
yeah, yeah, like
60%.
these numbers are crazy. And the people that work there, I mean, it's not just about the business owners, it's about the community around it, and then the people that work there, and then they support their families, and it's a huge issue. So my thoughts on the whole situation globally is that people are going to evolve through this. I think it's just another part of this human evolution that we all go through. It's funny, when I did a float tank session not too long ago, I think it was about 2 weeks back. I have one this Sunday, but I did one 2 weeks back, and I wanted to focus in a bit on Earth and the situation that's going on Earth. So it's funny you mentioned the alien thing, because I was like floating around the universe in my float session, and I was like, let me just dip in on Earth, see what's going on down there, see if I can get like a little grasp or handle on it. And
It's
it just seemed like
Arcturian
a shit
Atom.
show.
That would be a good show. You could name it Arcturian Atom. There you go.
Yeah, yeah. It felt like a total shit show. And I was just like, this is wild. But you know what? This is only what's going on Earth. And this is only, let's say, one system in a larger ecosystem. And this is one evolutionary process within one system in a larger ecosystem. So you can look at it from a macro lens and really say, and kind of take a breath. Some people get so, if you look so micro and so minute and so finite into something, and then you can get kind of caught up in it and lost in it and think that that's the only reality that exists. It's like tunnel vision. um, so a lot of people are very emotional right now around that, but I think if people go inwards, like this time is, that's why it's an evolutionary process. People go inwards more, they start to realize themselves as being part of this greater ecosystem, and they can sort of rest and reside in that more comfortably, I find. um, because it is all, this whole thing is just temporary, and we all come out of it. The people the people that aren't going to obviously die from it and all this and that, but the people that come out of it are going to come out stronger, more evolved, physically, mentally, emotionally, and it's going to lead to a greater humanity, sort of like a raising of the frequency of all of humanity. So when I see challenges like this, I think that they're exciting, and yeah, I think people could look at it from that perspective as
It's
well.
interesting, right? I mean, it's like if you look at your followers and probably a lot of mine as well, you get kind of this totally different experience from people. Like some people are like, oh, right now is just horrible, and I hate it, and mental health challenges and all kinds of stuff associated with that. And then you got other people that are just like writing everywhere saying, I'm so happy to be alive at this moment, right?
Hmm.
To be experiencing this. And so you've got this incredible spectrum
Hmm.
of experience. And how much do you think we play as a conscious participant in all of this, in how we experience our reality is directly tied to how we decided to perceive our reality?
The experience of it and the perception of it, you mean?
Yeah.
There's an interesting story. I believe it was Mother Teresa, and she was in some war-torn country visiting, and it was shambles everywhere, buildings torn down, just looked like a wreck. but she smiled, and she had this amazing, glorious smile on her face, and she walked into this street that was all like, war torn and a complete wreck as well, and she saw this little flower growing up from the ground, and she was just in awe of this beauty that can grow amongst all this chaos. And it's really analogous to the human being and the human the evolution of the human consciousness, because amongst all that chaos, amongst all that, seemingly chaos, really, there is some order to it, though, and it is that evolution, that process of it. So the experience you can always perceive it, from a new way, just as Mother Teresa did in that example, that it's just like, when you start to perceive it that way, you almost create this overarching layer over what is, and you create this new reality. It doesn't necessarily say the old one doesn't exist and it changes overnight and this and that, but you start to solidify this new reality as time goes on, and eventually you look back and things are totally changed. That's sort of how it works in a way, as far as I can see it, in terms of perception, and then bringing that into some form of solidity in terms of the waking state and the everyday reality.
Yeah, I tend to agree. For me, I think that 90% of what happens to us is not actually what happened to us. It's what we perceive happened to us. And it depends on which lens we're looking at our world through. If we're looking at the world through a lens of gratitude for every moment, and then we realize that our higher self is sort of directing and guiding us, then when something happens that's not so positive, right? It could be what we perceive as immediately a bad thing. If you look at it through the right lens, every time I look back at my life and I say, geez, that was a really bad thing that happened, and that was a moment of challenge and difficulty. Now I look back at every one of those times and I say, that was the best thing that ever happened.
You find that flower, basically.
That's right. You find the flower. And I remember, once when I lost a job and all my hopes were dashed and everything, and I got sick on a plane coming back. I was in my TED talk. I told the story of it. And the next morning I went out to get the paper and I reached down to pick it up. I'm in my robe in a depressed state. And I thought to myself, today could be the worst day of my life or it could be the best. It's my choice. And I decided that it's going to be the best. And so that's when I started my company. And, I left kind of the big pharma industry, and I was like, I don't want to be a participant in that way anymore. I want to start my own company. And I look back on that moment as one of those totally defining moments. And most people would have said, geez, you must have been totally depressed. No, I had incredible energy from that moment forward, and directed into creating something that I wanted to build. And I think all of us, no matter what the circumstances, we can find silver linings. We can find the silver lining. We can find the flower, and I think that's such an important thing. And the more we realize that everything that happens to us is just an experience where we have an opportunity to learn, and then how can we flip this towards benefit of learning, right? It may mean you go through more difficulty for a while, but if you can look at it with a different mindset, it's being the change that you want to see in the world. And as you become that change, then the world changes around you. It's kind of super powerful. So what kind of spiritual practices do you put in place? I know you're a very Zen kind of person, and you're into the whole esoteric. So what are the spiritual practices? And do you have like people that you look to that have written books, either in the now or in the past, that are sources of inspiration for you in that spiritual practice?
Yeah, that's a big question. So spiritual practice, I like to dabble in a bunch of different things, because I feel that there's all roads lead to God. I don't remember which quote that is, but you could say there's many roads that lead to God. But I mean, as you can take the good out of all sorts of different practices. I do like Zen practices. Someone that I've actually interviewed on my podcast is Lama Surya Das. He is a Dzogchen practitioner, which is like a Tibetan Buddhist method of teaching. And that really focuses on natural great perfection, which is just embracing all that is and how beautiful and wondrous it is to be alive. Stand on a mountaintop and really just open up and go, look at the sky, do sky gazing. This is a big aspect of Dzogchen. I liked watching treetops, things like that, and just really understanding natural great perfection is that in itself could take a lifetime, I would say. So I've really been drawn to that over the years. I also like to experiment with different chemicals, like different psychedelics and things like that. I'm not sure if you can call that a spiritual practice, but I actually write. I'm an author on lifehack.org. I write a lot about different supplements that someone can take. And a lot of that does include psilocybin mushrooms. I really experiment with those quite a bit. So I do microdosing. I've also taken larger doses. The microdosing sessions I've been doing in float tanks, and I find that it really allows me to explore the depths of my own consciousness. I don't know how to put it exactly. It's not. I usually try to have an intention, but my last session I wanted to embody love and compassion. That was sort of my 1 hour float, and I really wanted to be swelled with love and compassion. And everyone that I meet in the world, I wanted to exude that and have them feel that joy and that love and compassion themselves, because that is sort of the natural order of things. This is like absolute truth to me, because when I've had certain experiences, I feel there's this unpouring of, or this pouring down of love and compassion on each and every one of us that we're not tuned into for some reason. Like we're caught up on screens and devices and random things that distract us and consume our attention, and we're like cut off like from this well of love that's like ever nourishing and always down, like shining down on us. It's so amazing. So I guess that's my spiritual practice in a way, is to embody those things and then to carry them with me throughout the world. It's tricky at times when my developer messages me and say, this just broke, something,
Yeah.
we've got to fix, whatever, this is happening, or this server crashed. Like, it is what it is. But as long as you're coming from a place of that love and compassion, the decisions you make are usually going to be in union or one with the path of the higher self that you were alluding to earlier, that self is sort of setting out for you. So you kind of just rest in that love, rest in that compassion, and then move forward. So those are the practices I usually take. I'm also an ambassador for the Love, Serve, Remember Foundation, which is Ram Dass's foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm definitely a fan of Ram Dass. I love his stuff.
Yeah. So with that, I had a Skype call with Ram Dass
Really?
a year or two, about 2 years before he passed, and it was beautiful. I mean, we just kind of sat there enjoying each other's presence. We mostly just sat there smiling, and we exchanged a few stories here and there, and I feel really connected to that community as well, the Love, Serve, Remember Foundation and everything they do. Ram Dass, actually, Lama Surya Das is friends with Ram Dass.
Really?
So yeah, that community is, I guess I'm sort of in there as well, spiritually speaking. Other practices, I mean, I find cold therapy to be spiritual to some degree. I do cold showers, I do ice baths,
I do cold showers.
Yeah, all that stuff
Yeah.
I feel can really have this spiritual impact on your life, and you can have this weird appreciation, like you feel like revitalized in such a way that unless someone
wakes you up.
Yeah. Oh, it'll wake you up. Yeah. It'll make you feel very alive.
Oh yeah. It's
Yeah.
like I don't start my shower like ice cold, but what I
No,
do,
you don't have to.
I start with a little bit warmer, and then by the end of it, it's like cold, like
Yeah.
at the coldest cold. But I kind of like inch it down, and then I find myself, it's like exercise. It's like you want to do it, right? You want to
Mhm.
go there. And even though it's not exactly, I mean, it can be pretty startling, right? The first few times.
Yeah, definitely. It takes a while to get into it. Yeah, it can take a while.
What a
Yeah.
difference it has made for me, because
Mhm.
in Ayurvedic, I am in philosophy, I am Pitta, right? So fire hands and
Mhm.
all that. So I always run really hot, right? Always run hot, and at risk of being more balanced toward the acidic side. So the cold shower really helps snap you.
Yeah.
That with the more alkaline based diet definitely helps too.
I'm just trying to think of other practices I have, but going back into the psychedelics, there's other substances I've done that I'll experiment with. One in particular, and it made me think of something that we were discussing. I'm not sure if it was before this call or during here, but the connectivity of everything. I took an edible form of DMT, which is it's 4-ACO-DMT is the actual compound. I've also had the one where you smoke it and you blast off for 15 minutes. But this edible form is really interesting. And I was in this state for maybe 6 to 8 hours or more. But I would see this interconnectedness of everything. What seemingly is empty space around us is not at all empty. I would see geometric patterns interlaced between clouds, between, if we were standing in front of each other, or sorry, you're in front of me, there would be this something between us that I was seeing. So just absolutely amazing experience with that. And it reminds me actually of Indra's net, which is from, I believe it's Hinduism, and it has to do with that everything's connected in the world with a web held together with tiny jewels.
From the Bhagavad Gita?
Yeah, I believe that was the text. Yeah.
Or from the Upanishads, I can't remember.
And you mentioned actually even going back to the authors and stuff, or because there are a few, I've even interviewed quite a few. Often cases I'll listen to a book, and there's one I just finished, LSD and the Mind of the Universe. And I'll be hopefully interviewing that author soon. I think my assistant's trying to reach out to him to book him, but I like to speak to them afterwards because sometimes like their work is so powerful. But LSD and the Mind of the Universe was this professor, and he basically ran LSD experiment on himself for 20 years with a sitter, and he was actually taking notes on his experiences. So for 20 years, he was taking LSD. I don't know if it was every week or a couple times a week, but just logging the whole experience of it all. Really great book. And I find with the audiobooks and stuff, I usually listen to them at 1.5 to 1.7 times speed, because you'll get through books 60 to 70% quicker. It just makes sense.
I've never thought of doing that.
Oh, it's brilliant. If you just want to crush books fast, like I'm good. I'm quick with information.
Does it sound like you're listening to the Chipmunks or something?
Yeah, like some authors, they talk very slowly, or the narrator will speak very slowly too. So then you can go 1.8 or something, but to get through the books very quickly, it's good. And then you can listen to them again. So you can actually listen to a book twice in the span of what would have been once. And I find you retain that information regardless. I mean, it may take.
I'm going to try that the next time I listen to Autobiography of a Yogi, because that has some slower sections, but it's a very profound book.
Yeah.
And I'm going to definitely try that.
You'll still take it in. You'll take in all the information. You can be doing something else. You could be driving. You still take it all in. Like our brains are amazing.
Way more capable than what we.
Yes, an amazing piece of technology. When I was younger, I wanted to learn Spanish, and I was going to Spanish classes. Like I was paying to go to a separate Spanish school, and I would listen to Spanish while I was sleeping. So I had headphones on, and I would just listen to Spanish conversations and stuff, and it would help me at that time. Sadly, it's been years since I've practiced Spanish, but our brains are they have so much capability that we don't realize. We have the most amazing, immense piece of technology, and we don't really recognize it. We want to plug in some third something to the side of our head that Elon Musk is making, wired into the brain. It's like we haven't even fully tapped into the capabilities of our brain without some AI. It's a little strange to me. I understand his proposing that it's going to help with mental disabilities, or people have cognitive problems, but for the everyday user, there shouldn't be an everyday user of something like that. Like master your mind and then go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think ending on your last comments about the ether and we're all connected was a great kind of place to take this when we started from that point. So it's very much a snake swallowing its tail. And I want to thank you, Adam, for taking the time with me and for being a great friend. And I feel like I know you pretty well now after we've kind of met several times on Zoom. I hope to meet you in person one day.
Yeah, that'd be great. Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to do one of these floating experience sessions, I guess, which I have not done yet. So I look forward to doing that, hopefully sometime.
Yes. And if you get a chance, get access to some psilocybin mushrooms and
what a magical carpet, magical mushroom ride.
Yes.
Floating the tank. Sounds pretty epic, I think.
It is.
I've not done that. So it's definitely on the list of experiences that probably need to be experienced at some stage. Anyway, Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
For sure. Yeah.
All the best.